and I quote, "The rationalized incentive scheme under the CREATE Act has also made possible the generation of investments amounting to more than 1 trillion pesos and more than 100,000 new jobs. This promising state of affairs is now beckoning us to create more through the passage of the Create More Act." Now, let's begin with Secretary Go. Please expound on this.
The Create More Act is on top of the list of priorities among the priority bills currently at the Senate. We have received the very strong signals of very strong support from the upper house. The result of the many trips of our president has solicited many comments and concerns regarding the current situation for fiscal incentives in our country. Therefore, we work together with all the stakeholders and all the government agencies concerned to come up with some amendments to the Train Bill and the Create Bill. So now we have the Create More Bill, which will achieve several things. Foremost is to speedy up the processing of applications for fiscal incentives for foreign direct investments as well as domestic market enterprises. One of the major features of that bill is to empower the investment promotion agencies in our country to be able to process majority of the applications within their levels. Second main objective of the Create More Bill is to simplify and to clarify the VAT provisions that have become clouded by the previous laws. No? So there will be a lot of clarification on specifically value-added taxes as well as the non-income tax benefits of registrants in our investment promotions agencies. And third will be the VAT refund issues that are currently a concern of the stakeholders. So there will be more clarity and streamlining of VAT refund applications in the Create More Act.
Thank you, Secretary Go. Let's move on to Secretary Balisacan. This is about rice production. Inilahad ng Pangulo na ang ani na ito ay katumbas lamang ng 13 milyong tonelada ng bigas. Kulang pa rin ito para sa ating pangangailangan na 16 na milyong tonelada ng bigas kung kaya't napipilitan tayong mag-angkat. Ngunit lokal na production pa rin ang ating mas pinahahalagahan. Ano po ang masasabi ninyo dito?
Thank you. Thank you. I think that question should have been with Sekiko, but let me start with that so you can elaborate later. First of all, let me provide the context. As you have seen in the speech of the President, food security is a major concern. And itong food security has 4 dimensions. Availability, affordability, access, and the nutrition value. Now, with respect to availability, we have been pushing for national availability of rice. Unfortunately, the challenge we have had over the past 3 decades is that our population is growing faster than our production. Because productivity growth has been quite slow relative to population growth. So over the years, the gap between our domestic requirement, consumption requirement, and production has been growing. And the only way we can supply affordable and accessible food to our Filipinos is to increase that availability by bringing in additional supply through importation. So with respect to accessibility, the issue there is also making sure that rice is available in whatever corners of the Philippines a Filipino is. And so it's very important that logistics is available, that a very efficient distribution system is there. With respect to affordability, it's not just a question about price, which has been very high, but it's also a question of the purchasing power of consumers. That is, income is a major aspect of that. So, and of course, the nutrition is. I leave that to the DOH. So, if you see this problem is a multifaceted, and the solution requires whole of government approach because it involves so many sectors. But clearly, addressing the productivity issue is a main concern because, as we have pointed out, government has, we have neglected the sector for so many decades, and it's high time that we pay attention to this, and we are doing that now. Now, it has become even more critical issue these past few months because inflation in rice has reached over 20%, and whereas our overall inflation target is 2 to 4%. That has created a lot of problems, not just for our poor people, but also for the macroeconomy, and because that has led to higher interest rates. And so I can stop there, but I think that we are doing so many things on addressing the rice issue, and it's not just a rice issue, as I pointed out, but it requires a lot of intersectoral, intergovernmental work.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to add to that, Secretary Laurel?
Well, more or less, I agree with the comments of Secretary Balisacan naman. So,
okay, and then we'll get to you in a little while as well. We have a quote for you also. Secretary Balisacan, we also have, the President also mentioned this in his SONA. Because of compelling emergency reasons such as illegal price manipulations by hoarders, we are constrained to temporarily implement mandated price ceilings on rice. We also extended the reduced tariff rates to facilitate the importation of rice, corn, and pork until the end of this year. Tinitiyak ko sa ating mga magsasaka at sa buong sektor ng agrikultura na ang mga ito ay pawang pangkagipitang solusyon lamang. End of quote. What would NEDA have to say about that?
Okay, yeah. As I pointed out earlier, the last couple of months, starting mid last year, prices have risen. They've become elevated. That the overall inflation for the country was starting to be dominated by food inflation. Of course, we know the reason for the increases in those prices. Primarily of this is the world price increases, particularly for grains. That was because of this regional conflicts, starting with the Russia-Ukraine war that disrupted the global supply chain. No? But domestically, we also have some problems with meat, in particular, the African swine fever, which caused a sharp reduction in our meat supply, particularly pork. No? Then you have this El Nino that hit us hard, particularly our rice sector. So all this means that there's simply not enough local production to meet our growing consumption needs, and we needed to bring in that imports. And while global prices were rising and remain elevated during that period, part of the temporary solution was to reduce the tariff, because if you have elevated prices in the world market, and then you put on top of that high tariff, then the more those prices will be felt at the domestic level. So clearly, part of our policy tools to moderate and stabilize prices is to temporarily reduce those tariffs. And that's what we did. through the actions of the NEDA board.
Thank you, Secretary Balisacan. Let's move to the right side of the stage. The President also highlighted this in his SONA. This is for the Philippine Space Agency. Since the nation's foray into space technology, our satellites in space have generated more than 51,000 maps, images, and spaceborne data for various purposes. These now provide us with vital information that guide our country's stratagems and decision-making in agricultural development, urban planning, and environmental management, including the strengthening of our maritime domain awareness, but to name a few. For Director General Mariano, the Philippine Space Agency is really coming up with a lot of tools for the government agencies to be aided with satellite. But for this specific conversation, let's focus on how will the Space Agency ensure food security.
Thank you, Daphne. Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. And thank you for this opportunity to shed more light on this. First of all, when the President Bongbong Marcos Jr. talked about space technology, he was articulating two things, the present and the future. When he mentioned the 51,000 maps that were produced by the Space Agency in the course of 2.5, 3 years, he was talking about the capabilities that we are already trying to leverage. What's available now, let's use it. So the Space Agency is taking whatever is available in terms of satellite data. These are satellites, both Philippine satellites and satellites of other countries that we leverage. So we take that data and apply it right away. So at the same time, he talked about the future. He talked about the engineers building satellites because we're also going to try to build local industrial base for space technologies that would create high-value products. Now, for food security, there's been a lot going on with, the space is the ultimate high ground. From that vantage point, we can see wide areas. We can see frequent revisits of these satellites, measurements from space of agricultural parameters. We have problems perhaps distinguishing fake vegetation from real vegetation, but for satellites, they can see very fine colors or so-called wavelengths, and that will allow them to distinguish growth stages of different crops, whether a crop has some disease or whether it's ripe for harvest already, etc. So those are capabilities that we are leveraging now. The Space Agency in the Philippines is all about collaboration. We're talking to different agencies of government, DNR, DA, DOE, DBM, to leverage these capabilities.
Well, thank you very much, Philippine Space Agency. So we can see that nation building here is not just in land and on our seas, but also in outer space. Very exciting. Okay, now let's move on to the center of the stage for Secretary Recto. The President also said, soon we will be implementing the pre-border technical verification and cross-border electronic invoicing of import commodities. This will send a strong signal that we mean serious business. Your take on this, Secretary?
Yes, we've been working with the President and the Bureau of Customs with regarding to this issue, and it is both trade facilitation and to curb smuggling. So this is part of our tax administration efficiency as well. And as the President said, we have a target to finish all of this within the next 2 years.
Wow. All right, another quote. The President also acknowledged the Congress and said, thanks to Congress, public-private partnership is a crucial funding mechanism for big-ticket projects. It's now institutionalized by force of law. PPP is seen to facilitate strategic investments and the timely development of projects under our Build Better More program, especially since around 1/4 of our flagship projects have been envisioned to be funded through this modality. Secretary Recto, please expound on this.
Yes, that's correct. That's part of our development plan. We have roughly about 9 trillion worth of investments in physical and digital infrastructure. That includes energy as well. A big part of this should be funded by the private sector. It is wise for government to use private sector balance sheet to fund these projects, and there is no additional debt or deficit insofar as government is concerned, and we will be able to get the efficiencies of the private sector.
Thank you. Another highlight during the President's SONA was when he mentioned, and I quote, "The Philippine financial system remains robust and resilient. Tax and non-tax revenue collection was also efficient, in pace with our rejuvenated economy. Notably, for the past 2 years, our GOCCs remitted dividends to the national government with a combined tally exceeding their contributions in 2022. Secretary Recto, more
Yes.
details on this, please.
Yeah, first, I'd like to say that, one, we are on track to hit our fiscal targets for the entire year, and that's roughly about 4,250 billion. In the first 6 months of the year, we've collected more or less half of that. A large portion is also from non-tax revenue. Essentially, this is from GOCC dividends, privatization, income from the Treasury, so on and so forth. And we intend to double our collections from non-tax revenue this year. Last year, it was roughly about 200 billion. This year, roughly, we will get about 400 billion.
Thank you, Secretary Recto. And let's move on to Department of Budget and Management. Okay. Building on these and guided by strong fiscal discipline, our proposed government budget for this year was crafted with utmost care, diligence, and meticulous attention. We look to the cooperation of our colleagues in the legislature, not only that our proposed national budget be approved in your usual timely manner, but that it be adhered to as closely as possible. We expect all agencies to ensure that every centavo allocated will be judiciously spent for our urgent priorities and socially impactful programs. Secretary Pangandaman, kindly expound on this, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Daphne. Magandang umaga po. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yes, our budget was approved by the President and the Cabinet 3 weeks ago. It amounts to 6.352 trillion pesos. It increased by 10.1% from this year's level of 5.768 trillion pesos. It's consistent with our fiscal consolidation program. It remains to be above 20%, a little above 20% of our gross domestic product. And if I may say, no, our department heads and agency heads submitted a total of 9.2 trillion pesos worth of programs and projects. We are happy to note that our cabinet secretaries or department secretaries are finally focusing and prioritizing their projects and programs. Thus, the big amount that they propose. But then, with the DBCC, we really have this fiscal consolidation. So it reached to only 6.3 trillion pesos. We thank them for carefully prioritizing their projects. Those projects that were included in the level that we have for 2025 for our national expenditure program were carefully studied by them and the department by using the following criteria. First, we ensure that the proposed projects are implementation ready or shovel ready. They have done all the necessary planning so that they can already go on with the implementation of their projects. Second, their capacity and absorptive capacity. We check and we look at their previous absorptive capacity from previous years since 2022. Next, we ensure that the projects are under the PDP Development Plan 2023-2028 and coherent with the medium-term fiscal framework 8-point socio-economic agenda. And I think, if I may, it's in the next question. And then we also, I think the biggest bureaucratic efficiency that the government done this year was the passage of the National Government Procurement Act.
Thank you, Secretary Pangandaman. You were excited to talk about this next quote. Let me read this. Of course, the President values a proper utilization of funds. And with this, he shared, with the newly enacted Republic Act number 12009 that I signed just last Saturday, government procurement will be modern, and innovative, more streamlined and efficient, and truly at par with the global best practices. Secretary Pangandaman, how will this new act contribute to the proper utilization of government funds?
Well, first, the National Government Procurement Act, if I may say, is the biggest anti-graft and corruption reform in our modern history. So we're happy that the 20-year-old law is now amended, and it's more it's fully modernized. I mean, the process and the procurement system. The institutionalization of the early procurement method. Previously, we don't have it. We just issued circular on this. But now, it's already part of the law. Meaning, once we submit the National Expenditure Program, all the projects of my colleagues here can already be bidded out as early as we will submit the fiscal year National Expenditure Program on July 29. Meaning, after the submission to Congress and the Senate, they can already bid out their projects. And by January 1, they can already prepare the notice of award. So by January 1, they can already implement their projects. I think that's important in terms of implementation of their projects. Second, will you make use of technology, of modern technology? For common use supplies, we will use systems and applications like Lazada and Shopee. So it will just be add to cart, because we know that for common use supplies, a lot of common use supplies are not available in procurement service in our warehouses. But now it will be online, similar to Shopee and Lazada. And we introduced a new mode or alternative mode of procurement. It's not just the low cost, but we will also consider the quality of the goods and services that we need in the national government. So basically, those are the three. And yeah, we will introduce green procurement in our procurement process, and we will have observers from the civil society in our procurement processes in the department. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Secretary Pangandaman. Now we'd like to ask Secretary Pascual of DTI to please expound on this statement by the President yesterday. Relevant scholarships and R&D grants will continue to be available, aligned with our agenda to foster startups, to commercialize and mass-produce R&D outputs. Crucial support, such as intellectual property rights enforcement and venture financing, have been put in place. Secretary Pascual, your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Daphne. I'll focus on startups first. Why we need startups? We need startups to promote innovation and adoption of technology in our economy in order to support the progress of the economy. And the DTI is taking the lead in promoting startups. We have various programs, starting with the initial stage of startup formation. We have a program called IDEA, and then we have the next program is advanced. It's advanced stage, and then the GAP. That's bringing the startup to the global access in providing market and financing. The areas that are being addressed now, more than 130 startups that we have in our list of startups that we are supporting, and they are in various fields like agri-tech, fintech, edutech, and other sectors of the economy, specifically the application of advanced technology in these areas. We're also setting up, in cooperation with the Asian Development Bank, the National Innovation Gateway that will provide both the space and the support of startups and bringing them to a stage where they can
really participate in the growth of the economy and create more jobs for our people. Now, to support the startups, we need a strong intellectual property law. We have an existing one, and I'm going to present to the President, hopefully soon, the proposed amendments to this law so we can strengthen the enforcement of the law and the further protection of intellectual property owners against piracy and counterfeiting. For providing financing, we have venture capital funds in the National Development Company, as well for relatively larger projects, and for smaller startup projects, we have the Small Business Corporation that can provide equity financing.
Thank you, Secretary Pascual. The President further stated, quote, "To sustain the country's economic gains, we are promoting investment-led growth. We have set in motion policies and programs to create an environment conducive for businesses to thrive, like reforms in the capital markets and implementation of green lanes. As a result, we have green lanes certified around 100 projects with a total investment of about 3 trillion pesos across the sectors of renewable energy, digital infrastructure, food security, and manufacturing." Secretary Pascual, would you like to give us more details about this?
Yeah. No, well, the reason for the green lanes is that we in the DTI have been exerting effort to attract investments into our country. But the moment the interest has been expressed and pursued by foreign investors, they encounter obstacles in implementing their projects. So we propose to the President that we institutionalize the green lanes, which will be the system by which we can speed up the implementation of projects, starting with approval, permitting, and licensing phase, dealing with local governments and national government. This is being done through our One-Stop Action Center in the Board of Investment, which is part of the DTI. And we have been successful in attracting investments amounting in aggregate to 3 trillion pesos, involving, as already mentioned, more than 100 projects.
Thank you, Secretary Pascual. Let's move on to tourism. And for the DOT, here's what the President said. Air transport and tourism have been made more convenient because of the shift to paperless immigration and customs forms, thanks to the e-travel system. Soon, the piloted e-gates will be standard fixtures at airports to further facilitate ease of mobility during departures and arrivals. The implementation of the Philippine e-visa will be the next in our digital transformation agenda. Secretary Frasco, what does this mean for the Department of Tourism?
Thank you, Daphne. Good morning, everyone. Mayong buntag sa tanan. Well, we're very grateful that the President's prioritization of tourism continues, as very well articulated in his State of the Nation address. This, of course, necessitates the elevation of the Philippine tourism experience, which requires the introduction of digitalization, especially in the very first touch point for our tourists, and that is our airport arrivals. With the President's directive for the implementation of the e-visa system, we anticipate more international arrivals into the Philippines, especially that this will bring the Philippines shoulder to shoulder with our ASEAN neighbors that have already implemented e-visa systems. With the digitalization of the requirements for entry into the Philippines, we have also seen that this has increased convenience for our travelers coming into the country. And therefore, we welcome the President's programs that have been the result of collaboration between our government agencies, including the Bureau of Immigration, as well as the DFA and, of course, the DOT. We anticipate that with these programs that foster a more convenient and seamless entry into the Philippines, we will further improve the Philippine tourism experience.
Thank you. And here's another quote from the President. But the tourism challenge has already evolved and now requires a multifaceted strategy. The focus is now on experiential tourism. Secretary Frasco, what does that mean? Please expound on the term experiential tourism.
We're grateful that no less than our President has endorsed the programs that have been instituted by the Department of Tourism under the National Tourism Development Plan that he approved, where we anchor the Philippine tourism experience not only on our award-winning destinations, our mega biodiversity, but also on the strength of the Filipino culture, heritage, and identity. To allow our tourists to look at the Philippines from the length and the lens of our culture, our heritage, and our strengths as a people. And that is why, under the DOT's programs, we have applied a multidimensional strategy towards tourism. That includes a promotion of our food tourism, having recently just completed the United Nations Gastronomy Tourism Forum for Asia Pacific, which was attended by delegates from 43 countries, and that was held in Cebu. The promotion of heritage culture and the arts, where the DOT has taken the Philippine Experience Heritage, Culture, and Arts Caravans to 9 regions so far, where we work with our local government units to introduce their destinations upon the strength of the nuances of these destinations. The flavors, the songs, the dances, the traditions that have been long-standing, as well as the practices of our local indigenous communities, of which we take great pride. We are also very much into the collaboration with the private sector, as far as ensuring that when our tourists come to the Philippines, they're able to enjoy the many other offerings of the country. And this includes our dive tourism, our golf tourism, and especially as well halal tourism. The Philippines was recognized now for the 2nd year in a row as the emerging Muslim-friendly destination among the non-OIC countries. And this, we anticipate, will further expand the Philippine tourism portfolio, especially to our Muslim brothers and sisters that may want to come to the country. And therefore, with the President's directive of allowing Philippine tourism to be anchored on the Philippine identity, we anticipate that our tourists' experience in the country will encourage them to stay longer, to spend more, and to come back again and again as they enjoy all the programs and products of Philippine tourism enhanced by the love and warmth of the Filipino people.
Thank you, Secretary Garcia Frasco. And now let's move on to food security, which is, of course, one of the priorities of this administration. In his SONA, nabanggit ng Pangulo, kaya patuloy nating sinusuportahan ang sektor ng agrikultura upang mapabilis, mapadali at mapalakas ang produksyon mula pagpunla, pag-ani at paghuli hanggang sa pagbiyahe at pagbenta, at upang maiwasan din ang pagsira ng mga produkto. Nitong nakalipas na taon, higit 100 milyong kilo ng mga sari-saring binhi, suwi at pataba ang ipinamahagi sa mga magsasaka. Namigay rin ang pamahalaan ng higit 300,000 inahin upang ito ay maparami. Para sa mga isda naman, mahigit 500 milyong fingerlings at 3,000 mga bangka ang ipamahagi. Nakatulong din naman ang ginawa at inayos na mga fish ports upang masuportahan ang kanilang industriya. That is a lot and really worth enumerating, and I'm so glad that the President did that. Secretary Laurel, gaano kahalaga ang mensaheng ito ng ating Pangulo sa sektor ng agrikultura?
Well, ang mensahe ni Presidente ay napakalinaw, no? Kung nakita niyo yung detalya, it just shows how the President is on top of the situation. Although may problema nga tayo, pero nakita niyo naman na lahat ng aspect ng ating from planting hanggang harvest, ang pagbebenta para sa pangingisda, yung kailangan na ports and all. Alam niya at nakatutok ho tayo dyan at napaka-importante talaga na yung suporta ni Presidente ay nandyan sa ating agricultural sector.
Thank you. Kasama rin sa mga ibinahagi ng Pangulo, katuwang ang mga lokal na pamahalaan, dinagdagan pa natin ang mga kadiwa sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa. Higit sa lahat, layunin ng nating gawing permanente rin at mas madalas pa ang pagdaraos ng mga kadiwa. This certainly is good news. Secretary, please give us more details about this.
Yung Kadiwa program, which was launched during the President Marcos Sr.'s time, is actually a very good program na napabayaan for many years. So ngayon, ang gagawin natin is ile-level up natin from like a mere pop-up stores at meron dito, minsan wala. Meron, gagawin natin permanent brick and mortar stores to all over the Philippines. No, hopefully we will try to achieve 1,500 sites in the next 3 years, no? Para masilbihan ng halos bawat munisipyo at city sa buong Pilipinas. Then, ang maganda rito is parang ang Kadiwa, ang plano natin is maging cooperative run ito eventually. So yung mga farmers mismo at fishermen ay makadiretso sa consumers. Yan ang para lumaki ang kita ng mga farmer and fishermen at bumaba naman ang bili ng presyo ng mga consumers. Yan ang basic idea dyan. And of course, it is also done in order to keep our retailers and wholesalers honest, no? Para mabawasan ng profiteering if possible. So para bumaba din ang inflation. Thank you.
Thank you. The President also stated, still in agriculture, handa na rin ang pamahalaan na ilabas ang mga bakuna laban sa African swine fever na nagpapalakas sa mga alagang hayop at nagbibigay ng garantiya sa mga magsasaka laban sa pagkalugi. Again, Secretary Chu Laurel, paano ito matutulungan ang ating mga kababayan?
Well, ASF o African swine fever is really a big problem sa ating pork industry. And yung solusyon nga dito na nakikita, of course, one is biosecurity. But biosecurity alone is not enough, in my opinion, in our opinion. So yung ASF vaccine which was recently approved, one ASF vaccine which was recently approved, ay baka ibibid out na ng DA ito this August at hopefully by September ma-implement na. Titirahin natin at babakunahan natin yung mga red areas, red zones and yellow zones, hopefully to eradicate this for the growers. With that, we are hopeful na masolve na unti-unti yung issue sa ASF at hopefully by the end of the year, halos wala na sana to.
Thank you, Secretary Chu Laurel. Still on agriculture, but this time patubig. Okay, let's move on to the right side of the stage. Ang sinabi ni Pangulo, patutunayan ng proyekto sa Halaur River ang pinalalawig na potensyal ng irigasyon. Hindi na lamang patubig sa sakahan ang kaya nitong gawin. Ito na rin ay magagamit sa pagkontrol ng baha, paglikha ng kuryente, at pati na rin sa turismo. Moving forward, irrigation dams will supplement all our bulk water projects to ensure water security for our people, especially in the underserved areas. Administrator Guillen, you've had a great year also pushing for these high dams. Maybe this time, let's talk about the importance of Halaur and the high dams that you're building.
Well, thank you, ma'am. When it comes to food security, ang number one requirement po kasi niyan is yung irrigation facility. So, nakita naman po natin, pag nagtayo tayo ng mga high dams, multipurpose po yan eh. So, hindi ka lang merong irrigation, meron kang hydropower, meron kang ngayon multipurpose na yung water rights ng NIA, bulk water, aquaculture, tourism. So, maganda po, malaki ang bawi natin dyan. At saka yan yung ating pang long term solution. Ano po. So, now, kung titignan ko kasi natin, balikan natin yung pangalawang question nyo, yung 3 milyong kakulangan natin sa ating pagkain. Ano po. Sa amin po kasi sa NIA niyan, meron kaming 3 approach dyan. 2 non-infra, tsaka 1 infra.
Ang una dyan, dapat i-increase natin yung ating cropping intensity. Nasa 1.6 lang tayo eh. So ang gagawin lang namin sa NIA niyan, lalagay namin 2 cropping sa dry season, which is October hanggang February. February, magtatanim kami ulit, July, and then meron tayong dry season. Para at least, meron tayong almost 3 para ma-increase natin yung ating production. Pangalawa, dapat ma-increase natin yung yield. Ano po? Pag nilagay namin yung 2 cropping ngayon sa dry season, tataas ang yield. Kasi alam naman natin lahat na kapag dry season, mataas ang yield. Lalo na pagka hybrid seeds ang ating itatanim. Ano? Kaya nga mamaya, after nito, meron kaming convergence meeting with Secretary Kiko at sisiguraduhin namin na yung mga inputs na ipaparating ng DA at ng ating Pangulo sa ating mga magsasaka ay dapat na sa mga farmers natin prior na mag-release kami ng patubig. That would ensure yung pagtaas ng ating yield. Ano po? Yung 3 million kasi na yan, tansya ko, mga 500,000 to 700,000 hectares ang kailangan nating i-construct. Hindi naman natin mabibigla po yun. Ano? But pagka in-increase mo yung yield, nasa 4.2 yata tayo eh. Kung ma-increase mo lang ng 6 tons per hectare, food secure na po tayo eh. Rice, hindi na tayo mag-import ng rice. So yun yung isang target namin with the DA. Dapat ilagay mo sa science-based. Pagdating ng inputs, dapat science-based siya. Hindi siya dapat farmer's choice. Yun ho ang idea po ng NIA dyan. Ano? And pagdating naman po sa infrastructure, katabi ko naman ang ating DBM Secretary ngayon. Mamaya, bago matapos itong forum, ay naibulong ko na po lahat yung aming pangangailangan. At nagpapasalamat din po ako sa Congress kasi nakikita naman po namin, ramdam namin yung tulong nila sa atin sa pamumuno po ni Speaker Romualdez. Talagang natulong po sila sa NIA. So, yun po ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Gillian. Kitang-kita naman natin na the importance of agriculture. We've seen the support by giving inputs, but also the continued investment in infrastructure na kailangan talaga natin, especially in this time na parati tayong we are exposed to some climate-related emergencies sometimes. So this is also in preparation for all of that to give us food security. Now, usaping agraryo naman, ibinahagi ni Pangulong Marcos. Pinamamahagi na rin ang mga certificates of condonation kaugnay ng pagpapawalang bisa sa mahigit 57 bilyong pisong utang ng mga 600,000 benepisyaryo. Secretary Estrella, I know you have been waiting for this moment. Please tell us about this.
Maraming salamat, Daphne. Alam mo, akala ko hindi mo na ako tatawagin. Sapagkat doon sa kanina naghihintay kami, ako'y minake-upan, ang kapal ng makeup, baka kako hindi mo ako nakilala. Ako nga pala si Secretary Estrella, baka hindi na ako nakilala ng mga kababayan ko. Doon sa sinabi ng ating Pangulo, yung tungkol sa pamimigay ng Certificate of Condonation, may kwento ko lang, nung kami ay nagkakampanya pa, at lalo na sa Pangasinan, ang ating mahal na Pangulo, he's a very observant person. I guess he learned this from his father. And alam po ninyo, marami siyang tinatanong tungkol sa mga magsasaka, tungkol sa mga agrarian reform. And yung pala, nagfo-formulate na sa kanyang isipan. Kanya't nung siya ay naupo, he hit the ground running. Kaya pinatawag ako at sabi niya sa akin, Conrad, pwede ba? Ikaw na lang ang sekretary ng DAR. Ang sabi ko, opo, sige, tatanggapin ko po ang maging secretary ng Department of Away and Reklamo. Kaya nag-usap kami at sinabi niya sa akin, alam mo ba, Sec Conrad, sabi niya, sa palagay ko, itong sitwasyon ng ating mga agrarian reform beneficiaries na nabigyan natin ng lupa at meron silang binabayaran na monthly amortization dito sa lupa na ito sa Land Bank of the Philippines. ang sabi niya, ito ang sitwasyon ng ating mga agrarian reform beneficiaries. Unang-una, merong climate change. Naapektuhan ng gusto ang ating agrikultura. Alam iyan ng ating Secretary ng Department of Agriculture. Pangalawa, nagkaroon ng pandemya. Naapektuhan na naman ang ating magsasaka. Pangatlo, nung tinignan namin ng gusto ang datos ng Land Bank of the Philippines at ganon din ng Department of Agrarian Reform, napakahirap na natignan at suriin kung sino na ba ang nakabayad, kung magkano na ba ang nabayaran. Magulo na ang mga datos. Kaya't minabuti ng ating mahal na Pangulo. Ang sabi niya, mabuti pa, wag na natin pagbayarin ang mga magsasaka. Dahil hindi na rin lang naman sila makakabayad dahil sa sitwasyon na to. Ang sabi naman namin noon, opo sir. At yung inyong ama, namigay ng lupa, ngunit may kasamang utang. Kayo po, ibibigay niyo ang lupa na walang kasamang utang. Sa palagay ko, yan ang genuine agrarian reform. So, what he did, in the meantime, kasi kailangan niya ng enabling law. Nung wala pang batas, ang ating mahal na Pangulo ay lumagda ng isang executive order. Ito po ay Executive Order number 4, suspending or calling for a moratorium of payment of amortization by the agrarian reform beneficiaries. Pansamantalang hindi mo na sila magbabayad. Habang hinihintay natin ang House of Representatives at ganon din ang Senate na mag-aproba ng panukalang batas na burahin na ang utang ng ating mga agrarian reform beneficiaries. At nagpapasalamat kami kay Speaker Romualdez at ganon din sa lahat ng mga congressmen sapagkat itong panukalang batas na ito doon sa Kongreso walang tumutol kahit isa. Lahat sila unanimously approved. Ang ganon din sa Senado, nagpapasalamat din kami sa kanila sapagkat unanimously approved din ang panukalang batas na ito. At agad-agad pinirmahan ng ating mahal na Pangulo. At nung pinirmahan niya, ay ang ibig sabihin nito, ang mga amortization fees ng agrarian reform beneficiaries ay burado na. Ngayon, pagkatapos nito, siyempre kailangan namin i-validate ng Land Bank of the Philippines at ganoon din ng agrarian reform. At it took some time for us to validate at ngayon na-validate na namin, meron na kaming certificate of condonation and release of mortgage na i-award. As a matter of fact, nag-award na kami doon sa Pangasinan nung nakaraang linggo ng ating mahal na Pangulo. At ito ang tuluyan na nag-aalis ng tanikala upang tuluyan ng maging malaya ang ating magsasaka. At dahil dyan, yung kikitain nila, imbis na ibabayad nila sa monthly amortization, ito'y magagamit pa nila sa pagsasaka o di kaya pag-aralin ng kanilang mga anak at marami pang bagay. Salamat po.
Thank you, Secretary Estrella. Another help for Filipinos was also mentioned during the President's SONA. To reduce unnecessary business costs, local government units no longer collect fees and charges from motorists transporting goods and merchandise while passing through national roads. On the same principle, LGUs have been strongly urged to refrain from collecting similar fees for the use of local roads. How does the DILG view this? Yusek Odi.
Yeah, good morning, Ms. Daphne, of course. Naimbag na malem kada kayo amin. Thank you, of course, to the President and, of course, to this administration for making DILG as well as local government units part or an integral part of this food security and economic development agenda. In that respect, Ms. Daphne, EO 41 was issued by the President, espousing that prohibiting imposition and collection of pass-through fees along national roads, and strongly urging local government units to do the same. And Secretary Benhar Abalos, of course, under his leadership, is very supportive on food security. And LGU really plays vital roles para sa ganon ay ma-implement itong EO 41 intent. And various policy support had been issued by the department, number one of which is making an inventory kung ang mga lokal na pamahalaan ba talaga ay nag-i-impose at nagko-collect ng mga pass-through fees. And pangalawa, that policy support also emphasized and espoused na kailangang i-revoke ang mga ordinansa na hindi in sync or sumasang-ayon sa EO 41 and of course under our laws, Republic Act 7160. True enough, may 40 na lokal na pamahalaan out of 1,715 LGUs na may ordinansa imposing and collecting pass-through fees. Ito'y pabigat sa ating mga UBRA Broilers Association, mga livestock associations, mga vegetable traders, and of course, the transport group. Okay, mga Truckers Association. So, they really had advanced their concerns and issues na itong mga unnecessary fees because of the pass-through ay dinadagdag to ng ating mga Truckers Association sa mga goods as well as services, particularly the agriculture products. Pabigat nga naman talaga sa ating mga mamamayan, considering nga na sobrang umaaray sa inflation. So, very strong si Secretary Benhar, and thank you, Mr. President, for this, na rallying to ease the burden of the Filipino families. And itong 40 na to, sa awa ng Diyos, as of ngayon, wala na tayong ordinansa imposing pass-through fees sa ating mga lokal na pamahalaan. Kaya maraming salamat man sa mga 40 LGUs na yan. And at the same time, nirevoke nila yung kanilang mga ordinansa. But, importante na may continuous na dialogue. We don't stop monitoring and of course, telling LGUs na revoke that, rescind all your ordinances na inconsistent with national policies. We really need to monitor the impact, the result. And recently, an Truckers Association had advanced again their complaint. Meron pa rin daw. That's why Secretary Benhar Abalos, of course, and the team, the DILG team, really made an effort. We need to strengthen our operations. Police operations, as well as LGU, make feedback as well. Ano bang nangyayari sa ground? Huwag natin pabayaan. That's why our police stations, our DILG officers have this regular consultation with the Truckers Association, encouraging them to rebuild the trust of our Truckers Association, as well as the vegetable, fish, as well as broilers, dealers. Para sa ganoon is, there is a good engagement. A healthy engagement na yung mga ground na kailangan i-monitor ay maipapaabot sa atin as well as sa mga local chief executives. As of now, we need to strengthen more our police visibility, a good feedback, a more or less sincere, complaint advancement, sa ating opisina at bukas man ang ating opisina for that. And again, we will support, of course, food security and economic development, particularly ang pagbiyabiyahe ng ating mga goods and services. Ms. Daphne.
Thank you. Undersecretary Pasaraba, kitang-kita natin the importance of the role of the ILG in implementing the national government's agenda. And thank you for working with the local governments and cooperating with our national agenda. Now, my seatmate, for ARTA Undersecretary Abot, what is your reaction to this statement by the President? Conscious efforts to improve the ease of doing business and of delivering government services through digitalization, integration, and streamlining of processes have produced their intended multiplier effects. Cost savings from operations have translated to higher revenues and more speedy transactions. Undersecretary Abbott, would you like to share more details about this?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Daphne. The President has mentioned this in his SONA to streamline and digitalize the processes of national government agencies as well as LGUs so that we will be promoting ease of doing business. Our agency has been in the forefront of streamlining and digitalizing this process. This is in collaboration with national government agencies like DTI, DICT, DALG, and other government agencies. One significant program that I would like to present to you is that we ensure the compliance of the LGUs with regards to the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop, or the EBOS. Actually, out of the 1,634 cities and municipalities in the Philippines, there is already 1,178 cities and municipalities that declare themselves to have automated their business process. This means that their business registration is automated. However, this is not yet fully compliant, meaning that we have to validate it. Our agency has to validate it so that they will be fully compliant with the law. Out of that 1,178 cities and municipalities, there's about 741 of them that has adopted the e-LGU of the DICT. And out of that 741 or 1,741, there's about 46 that are fully compliant with the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop. So what is the effect of this being compliant with the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop? First, it reduces the processing time for businesses to register their entities, their businesses. Second, there's an increase in income. So aside from the reducing the business processing time of their registrations and their renewal, there's also an increase in income. I'd like to share a story about this effect of the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop. Actually, because of this ease of doing business program, an OFW who is based in Doha, Qatar, was able to register his business in a municipality in Camiguin, a 6th-class municipality which is EBOS compliant. You see, if even OFW from Qatar can register their business abroad, here in the Philippines, the ease of doing business has been promoted. No less than the President mentioned and said this, that every government agencies and LGUs must promote the ease of doing business. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Yusek. Now, before we go on, I would just